session actually, and we have already talked something about the online pedagogy so far. And before I'm gonna go over the previous session, I would like to remind something regarding the Zoom. If Zoom volume too low, check your system volume. If you have any technical issues, please log out and log back in. And webinar is being recorded and a link will be shared with you. And actually, I talked to the bootcamp officials and they are going to planning to share those recordings using a kind of website, and they are planning to put all recordings on the same page, and they are going to share those recordings as well as I know. Also, in terms of the certificate, they told me that if the participants attended at least 51% of the series, they are going to be awarded with a certificate. So most probably after the sessions ended, you are going to get your digital certificate soon, okay, from North American University. And if you have any question, please use the question and answer section, and I will try to answer your question at the end of the webinar, okay? And in the previous session, we talked about the pedagogy, which is the art and science of the teaching. And also we talk about the education and schooling, which is very important at these days. If you have some children, you understand the importance of the schooling, okay? You need to deal with those children at home. It's not easy job in terms of learning and teaching approaches. And distance education actually is a kind of different setting, is a teaching and planning learning in which teaching learning normally occurs in different place from learning, requiring communication. You need to use some kind of technology to communicate with your students and parents as well. And also there should be an institutional organization behind the whole scheme, okay? So you are supposed to be supported by an institution, okay? And learning, we talk about the learning, and also we talk about the interaction theory, which is very important, especially for the online environment. And as you know that there are three different types of learner interaction: learning content interaction, what you are trying to teach, and learner and instructor to teacher interaction, and the last one also learner to learner interaction, which is very important in terms of the learning outcomes in online environment. And we talk about the Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, and as you know that learner can do without any aid, okay, learn something without any aid, but they need to some guidance to increase their learning, and they need the guide from their peers and their teachers as well. So you need to focus on this area, and so because of that reason, you need to use some kind of interaction to get advantage of using this area to have your students learn. And we talk about the conceptual model of distance education. And as you know that there should be an organization like management, policy, and organization. Especially policy is very important for online environment because of the COVID-19 problem. Some schools actually are catch without any preparation, without any policy, online policy. And it is very hard to teach without any policy, specific policy in an online environment. So there should be some kind of organization behind the learning and teaching. And in the ideal situation, there should be a design approach, instructional design approach to create program and courses, and then teaching takes place, and there should be an outcome in terms of learning. But in terms of teaching and learning and program course design, there should be specific technology you need to have. Also, your students and parents should access that kind of technology you are trying to use in your online or distance education approach. And we talk about some distance learning, distance education concept and difference between teaching face-to-face and teaching online. And we talk about the advantages and disadvantages, actually problems with the distance education. And students are going to play another role in distance learning because it's not the physical environment. Students can act differently, even though your students is a great student in the physical environment, in online environment, they become another student. So there are some differences in online environment. So you have to consider those kind of disadvantages in terms of students' approach in online environment. And the most important part, I am getting some question regarding the student age. And actually, distance learning typically works best with older students who have consistent technology access. They have some specific skills and knowledge regarding how to use technology at home and will work responsibly on their own. Actually, I have 3 children, and one of my children actually is going to second grade, and he has some difficulties using the technology in terms of the distance learning. My other children do not have that kind of problems because they are older than my son. So you need to consider those kind of dynamics in terms of student in distance learning. And we talk about the 3 principles of effective online pedagogy. And according to Dr. Pels, there are 3 different principles you need to consider. One is let the students do most of the work. So you need to make sure that your students are active, okay? Actually, in distance education, these students are expected to be motivated, okay? They need to come to distance education environment with their own motivation. As you know, there are 2 types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic, coming from inside or some factors affecting your students to be motivated, okay? But lower grade students may not have that kind of motivation, either intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. So you need to make sure that your students do most of the work. They need to be active in their learning process. So you need to design your classes according to these principles. And also, I have already talked, interactivity is the heart and soul of effective asynchronous learning. Even though you are gonna use the synchronous at the same time, instruction you can use, like using Zoom or Google Meet, interactivity is very important for the online environment, especially if you are trying to use the asynchronous learning environment, which is going to be most possible for the most courses. And strive for presence is another principle for effective online learning. So we talk about specifically what those principles are, and you need to play a role, sage on the stage, from sage on the stage to guide on the side. And you know these terms actually, if you remember some learning theories, sage on the stage is related to the behaviorism. In behaviorism, teachers are very active. They are trying to convey information, knowledge, and skills to students, and students are ready to learn. But in online environment, it is not possible because of some kind of technical problems, some kind of emotional problems. So you need to play, as a teacher, you need to play a facilitator role, which is guiding your students from the side, guide on the side, principle is more effective for the online environment. The first one is kind of the behaviorist approach. The second one is going to be a little bit constructivist approach. Okay, you need to consider. And you may see more information regarding first principle. And second principle, where interactive is the heart and the soul. So you need to change your actually assignment or assessment method, okay? And online environment is not easy to conduct, so you need to consider alternative or authentic assessment methods to assess your students' performance, okay? So you may use some collaborative research paper or research proposal team or some kind of project so that your students work together to complete it. And you may think about it. And the third principle is striving for presence and discussion response add value. So you may consider to use some kind of discussion forums for your classes, social presence, cognitive presence, and or teaching presence in the subset of the third principle. And also social presence is dividing into three parts: affective, interactive, and cohesive. So you need to consider the expression of emotion, feelings, and mood. And interactive, evidence of reading, attending, understanding, thinking about other responses. And the last one is the sense of belongingness in terms of group commitment or common goals and objective. So it's going to be very important because your students, also yourself, shouldn't feel that you are the alone in the online environment, you are distanced. You don't need to feel that you are distanced and anybody, no, actually nobody take care of you. So if your students or yourself feel in this way, it's going to be a little problematic in terms of learning and teaching as well. Cognitive presence and teacher and students are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained discourse in a community. So you may consider that kind of environment for your classes. And also the last one is going to be teacher presence. Teacher presence is the facilitation and direction of cognitive and social process, very important. And you need to be checking regularly. If you are using the LMS, you need to check your students' feedback, comment, or their questions. You need to check regularly, so your students should understand you are there for them. So you need to be careful with the teacher presence, okay? And there are some different types of strategies in terms of teacher presence, setting a climate, assessing efficacy of process, something like that. Also, another approach is going to be direct instruction. You may want to use some kind of direct instruction. You may provide a lecture to your students, which is going to be direct instruction. And you need to be careful presenting content and questions, focusing on the discussion, summarizing the discussion, confirming understanding what they are supposed to, your students are supposed to understand. If they have some misunderstanding, you may need to correct them or provide more guidance. And diagnostic misperception and respond to the technical concerns. If your students have, most probably they are going to, you are going to be the first person in terms of any technical problem for your students. So you may need to be aware of that kind of technical concerns, and also you may know some solution for those technical problems. And also we have already talked classroom management strategies and opportunities for bad behavior are magnified by the power of technology. And as I said, students also may change in terms of their behavior. And if you have some students have behavior problem, they are going to have the same problem in the online environment. So you need to be aware of those kind of problems, and the technology actually will help those students, okay, in terms of the problems in online environment. So you need to be careful with these problems, and you need to cope with these problems with some strategies, okay? The online teacher must plan response and guidelines. And as I talked before that, there should be an institution behind you, and they have already created some guidelines and policies for teachers and students and parents as well. So these are very important, and standards for behavior must be clearly stated to online students. And also etiquette is very important. It is a kind of important approach to regulate the behaviors online environment. And strategies for avoiding and handling conflict, plan responses, anticipate problems, have consistent and thought out response ready. You may have some prepared answers, and publish a standard for behavior. So everybody should understand those kind of standards, and never respond in anger, progressively respond to the behavior. Also, you may need to contact parents if you cannot solve the problem with communicating in terms of communicating with students, okay? Also, you may talk to counselor if your school has. As you know, the bullying is very common practice in a physical setting, and in the online environment, actually cyberbullying also is very common, starting from the 7th grade, very important. So you need to cope with those kind of problem online, cyberbullying problems, and you may need to some kind of strategies for that kind of problem. And also distinguish intellectual disagreement from abusive behavior. So everybody understand there are some kind of standards everybody should abide by. And we talk about some solution to common behavioral problem: the spamming student, the student who sends an email bomb, a nitpicking student, lazy and inconsiderate student. Even though, for example, if you use the Google Classroom, you are supposed to invite your students, right, to join your classroom. Even though you invited your students, your students may not join the classroom, right? So you need to be careful with those kind of students, and you need to create some solution for those problems. The spamming student, okay, and the tardy students, and the abusive student, the domineering students in the collaborative work, and stalling students as well. You need to cope with these kind of problems, okay? You need to have specific solution for those problems. Solution to common behavioral problems, and also is recording is very important. You need to keep a record of correspondence and quickly respond to diffuse the situation. Also, you need to let your superiors about the situation you are having and you are experiencing. Okay, so everybody should be on the same page. Another problem is academic honesty, authenticity of student work. There are some solutions for authenticity, but you may not use the test or exams as you use in the physical environment. So you need to consider alternative technique and instruments for the assessment. But academic honesty is very important. And as the media equation in which people behave in the computer mediated situation in the same fashion as they do in the real world situation. So you need to expect some kind of plagiarism and academic honesty in honest actually will take place in online environment. So you need to consider those problems, okay? And most probably you are not going to have an opportunity to use some proctoring services for tests. So as I said, you may consider some alternative and authentic assessment methods as well. Anyway, and when you start teaching online, you may have some kind of opportunities, okay? And there are some difficulties, some challenges, but you may have some kind of opportunities. And you need to focus on the pedagogy or not just the platform. As you know, that there are many platforms, technology outside, like learning management systems, like Blackboard, you know, Google, Moodle, Classroom, Moodle, and there are many schools, many elements and platforms outside, but it takes time to learn those platforms, okay? So you need to focus on the pedagogy, which is the art and science of teaching, okay? And take advantage of interactivity. As you remember that interactivity is the heart and soul of the online, okay, environment. And this is opportunity to innovate. So it's going to be a kind of opportunity to innovate some specific alternative ways to teach and to have your students learn as well. And you need to create the expectation, as I mentioned, that there should be some specific rules and standards for your students. And the first thing is you need to set the classroom norms, and you need to announce those kind of norms. And maybe those norms should be appear on the top of the page. Your students will see when they log in the any learning management system. Determine your priorities, and you have some, you know, some challenges, and you need to prioritize your expectations. And so also audio matters, and you need to be careful with the preparation for the online environment. And it is very important in terms of the background noise, and you know, if you leave some, you know, noisy environment, you need to consider those kind of outside effects when you teach online environment. And don't expect to master everything on day first. It takes time to get some knowledge and skills, and you are gonna take those kind of advantages using online environment. It takes a little bit of time. Also, accessibility, another issue for the online environment you need to consider. Students have a range of abilities, and not everyone will disclose. And you need to consider those kinds of students. As you know, your student in a physical environment, your students should be act more disadvantaged students in online environment. So you need to consider those problems. Text is universal, so you may take advantage of using text for your students to convey information, to share some kind of knowledge and skills, okay? Also online textbook or other online platforms you may consider to share that kind of text with your students. And some students need additional processing time, and as they need to in the physical environment, and the processing time most probably will be different. So you may give your students some time to understand what you are trying to teach in online environment. And select accessible resources. So your students technology access may be limited, maybe not very fast, you know. So when you consider your resources, you need to think about in terms of your students' side, okay? So you may consider some open resources for your students if your school doesn't provide that kind of resources for your students. And also you need to consider the technical aspect of your resources as well. And in online environment, there are 4 different types of courses. The lecture-oriented courses, most probably you are gonna focus on the first one, case-based courses, small group discussions, and hands-on courses, which is going to be true for the specific scientific classes, like science classes and other type of classes, if you are teaching. And we are gonna focus most lecture-oriented courses, okay? When you provide the lecture, you need to create or upload your materials. You need to consider those kind of actions before teaching, okay? You may need to create specific material for your students, or you may create those kind of skills and share with your students without any problem. And also, you may consider pre-recording your lessons, okay? And you make some kind of recording before the actual class takes place. And presenting your lecture using some kind of teleconferencing tool like Zoom, like Google Meet, and like GoToMeeting. So you may need to consider those kind of technical environment and engaging students in the lecture-oriented courses. So I mentioned several times the interactivity, okay? Interactivity is going to be same with the engaging students. So you need to be careful those kind of interactivity takes place in your online environment. When you are creating and uploading your materials, put your slides in a consistent and distributable format, and it is going to be easier for your students to understand. If you have specific format you are using for your classroom, it's going to be easier for your students to understand, okay, your content. And also you need to break up your presentation slides. Be aware that online, perhaps even more than in the classroom, students will read first and listen second, okay? So you need to consider those kind of student approach when you create your presentation slides. And in terms of the pre-recording, if you are creating a pre-recorded lecture in a short time frame, which is actually not more than 15 minutes, and according to the research, actually, after the 6 minutes, and users become more motivated and less motivated to continue to watching, okay? So the ideal time frame 6 minutes, but not more than 15 minutes. You need to use the videos, okay? Provide an explicit roadmap at the beginning. Break down the lecture into shorter segments. If you have longer, for example, 40 minutes lecture, you need to divide, okay, your lecture into several parts based on the content of what you are teaching. A long pre-recorded lecture can be deadly to watch, so you have to be careful and consider those kind of approach. Try to make the learning experience inductive rather than entire didactic. So you are not going to be sage on the stage. You are trying to be a facilitator and guiding your students. So with your lecturing, you are not going to convey everything to your students, okay? Speak to the student, not the camera. So you need to consider that kind of approach when you are talking or providing the lecturing, okay? Not the camera. It's going to be same approach you are taking in the physical environment when you are teaching, okay? Insert yourself, a personal story, humor, editorial commentary into the lecture. So you are not only going to provide the content, you may provide some kind of humor and some kind of specific event you may think when you providing lecture. And also, you don't need to pre-record the entire lecture, as I said. Instead, you can pre-record certain segments of your lecture, okay, and leave the rest in class session if you are taking, okay. If you have some specific synchronous session, okay, you may provide some kind of specific video before the synchronization, teleconferencing session, okay? So your students will be ready when they come to the online live sessions. And in terms of the presenting your lecture, you need to practice in advance, okay? So you need to see your strengths and weaknesses when you presenting your lecture online and in online environment. Keep your normal pace, and just because things are delivered electronically doesn't mean you should speed up or slow down. So you play, actually you act like yourself. But according to some kind of research results, if the presenter talks very fast, learners understand more easier, okay? This is another research result, but you need to consider your student's profile, okay? Your audience profile is very important. You know your audience, and you need to consider those kinds of dynamic when you're providing your lecture, and be visible. And you need to show yourself when you are presenting your lecture, okay? In terms of the engaging student, the last one, reading the room, unmuted student can inadvertently start talking at the same time. You will not be able to read body language easily. So you need to remind your students that they need to mute themselves, okay? Unless you give the access or right to talk, okay? Otherwise, it's going to be a little chaotic environment in your classroom. Everybody starts talking. It's going to be very chaotic, and you cannot manage that kind of environment in online environment. And invite and respond to students. If your class is a large class lecture format with question and answer, and consider inviting students to ask their question in chat. And based on what kind of platform you are using, you need to take advantage of using those features when you use the teleconference or live sessions. Encourage students to reflect. So you need to ask your students, and you need to click on the pause, and then take your students' thoughts, what they are thinking, and you may take a temperature of your student in terms of the learning. Post answers later, and you might consider offering to post responses after the class to certain chat questions. After taking some questions from your students, you may consider to allow some specific time to answer those questions after presenting your lecture, okay? And the other one, case-based courses, and keep your students in front of you. And you may want to see your student faces, but not their voices. So it's very important. Also, the other students should see their classmates on the same screen, but they need to be muted, okay? Discussion transition using chat or question and answer forum. and you may create some kind of activities for your students to for the role plays or debates. And also you may use a strategy to warm and cold calls. Okay, you may use specific chat option to warn your students if they behave not appropriately. Okay, and raising hands, this if your teleconferencing system has that kind of feature, you may take advantage of using raising hands option. It's going to be similar with the physical environment. Also, you may use some specific polls, in order to get your students' feedback, and checking in and reading the room is very important. This is going to be all for these training sessions. And actually, I'm gonna check your question and answer. And this is going to be the last slide for my today's webinar. I'm gonna stop my video recording right now and then start answering your question. You have already posted the question and answer session. Okay, just a second. Okay, let me read your question if you have. Okay, I would like to know if it is possible to get the recording of the first and second. And as I mentioned before, the bootcamp is planning to share that kind of recordings, and they are planning to create a website, and they are planning to share those kind of recordings on the same web page. Okay, most probably you will get a link for those recordings soon. Okay. Please, when will the certificate of complete participant be issued out? As soon as the training sessions ended. Okay. I already. The bootcamp never actually shared the links. Yes, I know that, and I got an email from them yesterday, and actually they created a guide, policy in terms of the attendance. So if you attend at least 51% of the training sessions, you will be awarded with the certificate, and it's going to be process the certificate after the training sessions, and it may take a little bit time because there are more than 1,000 students right now. Nice to hear. Okay. Okay, I already talked about the certificate. How can assignment be in online teaching? Based on what kind of platform you are using, okay, you may have some kind of strategies to create your assignments, but your assignment shouldn't be same in the physical environment, okay? Because online environment is not same with the physical environment, so you need to consider other type of assessment methods, okay, to provide some feedback in terms of your students' performance in your classroom. Is it possible with mixed use group of concerned learner-to-learner interaction? A learner-to-learner interaction is very important in terms of the social constructive, as you know that. You may use that kind of approach in your physical environment, but in online environment, it's going to be more important, okay? And it's going to help your students in terms of their zone of proximal development, okay? So according to the research, actually peer evaluation, okay, is another approach to use learner-to-learner interaction as well. So you need to take advantage, think about to take advantage of the using the learning interaction in an online environment. For this online pedagogy training, there are 3 sessions. If you attended 2 sessions, you are going to be awarded with the certificate, okay? Would you recommend online teaching for 3 years old? No. My own, okay, thoughts, no, it's not possible. As you know, that in terms of the physical development of the student, it's not easy to provide that kind of technology to you 3 years older, okay? And according to the actually constructivism, students are going to build their own knowledge based on the previous knowledge. And 3-year-old student actually doesn't have that kind of previous knowledge and skills. They need to create, or they need to be provided by others. But as you know that the COVID-19 actually forces everybody to convert their courses to online environment. And actually it is going to be called in other terms, and there should be some kind of flexibility in terms of teaching and learning. So this is not the actual learning right now we are trying to implement, okay? This is the last session, yes. There are 3 sessions, and if you attended at least 2 sessions, yes, you will be awarded, okay? Good morning, okay. How can you end the Google Meet online teaching when you are done? I found they were still online after I end the meeting or teaching. Actually, you need to click on the recording button first, and then you need to close the window in order to end the Google Meet. Do you think it is okay for colleagues to see with the Google Classroom online or by using? You can entertain your kindergarten kids. Okay, you may provide some kind of activities, and in terms of the emotional side, yeah, you can take advantage of the teleconferencing tools, but it's not going to be same with the physical environment. As you know, that some countries actually are planning to open the schools for kindergartens and primary schools students, okay? Because of those kind of problems, they are not ready for the online education or online learning. But you may use some kind of conferencing tools. There is no best platform, okay, for anybody. You need to know your students and understand what their technology access, what their skills and knowledge, especially when you create your, actually design your course, you need to consider those kinds of dynamics. And based on your students, you need to create your own courses and programs as well. But at this time, we are trying to convert everything to online environment without any consideration. And we are trying to make some course content available for the students. And please try to do your best, and consider those kind of online pedagogy issues when you are teaching. It's not going to be same with the online physical environment. I couldn't connect. Okay. In pre-recording lecture, how long is advisable time duration? At most 15 minutes, okay? Not more than 15 minutes. You know the attention period of your students, and based on the age, the attention is going to be different, but 15 minutes you can pre-record it. Differentiation is another problem in online environment. Even you have more resources in the physical environment, and you may use and consider some kind of alternative platforms for those students who have some disadvantages. Okay, actually there are specific website talking about those kind of platforms for those students. Okay, you may conduct research on the web, and you may find, I don't remember right now, but for those students, you may use some kind of specific strategies, giving more time, you know, less workload. But one of the most important thing in online environment is the motivation. And if your students do not have any motivation, it is going to be very hard, very challenging for the online learning. Can online education be used for nursery students? Actually, there is no other solution, actually. You need to make them, you know, busy. So you may take advantage of using some kind of storytelling technologies you can use. And it's going to be a very interactive way for the students. And if you teach those kind of students, you may aware of those kinds of technology, okay? But if you want to get more learning outcomes from online learning, you need to consider your students' age. So it's going to be very difficult. Okay, this is the last session. Would you share the slide? Okay. %50 of the attendance, okay? Getting any certificate, okay? This is the last class. I am Leslie. I realize that you said this is session. Does that mean I missed session? Yes. This is the last session.